LA Galaxy GM Will Kuntz, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. He
I
hopped
sure
onto
hope so.
he hopped onto Unfiltered Soccer with Landon Donovan and Tim Howard, a great podcast, by the way, something I very highly recommend you listen to chat all about how this season is going and kind of why they are the way they are. This was before the 7-0 Red Bull beatdown, so he was a little bit more upbeat, I guess you could say. But on the call, he basically called out MLS roster rules for punishing teams for being successful, right? So I listened to this episode, and it was actually a really quick interview. He was only on there for like 15 minutes. But he did highlight some big points, and I kind of wanted to highlight these quotes and examples before we move on. He used verbatim, the rules make it impossible to have a deep roster. Then he hopped on and gave examples like Chicharito and Douglas Costa, who weren't playing and were physically not able to be replaced, including Ricky Puig in that same boat, right? Injured and just sitting there. Then you have the Dejan Joveljic thing, moving him on because they couldn't give him a raise without breaking the salary cap because of the U22 mechanism. And, he made one more comment that I thought really stuck with me. And he said, in any other league in the world, a club like the LA Galaxy would just be able to resign Joveljic, but we can't. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. But first, in this view, like your thoughts on kind of where we're going in this. Is this a lot of respect for coming out and being straight transparent? Or is he just trying to save face? This is a question from Lacuna Galaxiana, our friends at the LA Galaxy podcast. They posed this question. I wanted to pose it to you. Do you think this is really respectable, or is this just somebody trying to do damage control?
It feels a little bit like maybe damage control, I gotta say. I mean, I think most people at this point kind of realize that the roster rules are a little outdated. Obviously they had a purpose, right? And it served a purpose well. I think it still serves a purpose to make sure that we're not seeing the same teams win every single year, like majority of the other leagues that he's referring to have. Like, when was the last time we've seen? Has it really like I genuinely like off the top of my head cannot remember the last time a team won MLS Cup back to back because you get new winners all the time. And it's not like you see two teams switching back and forth every single year. It's like new people winning it all the time, which is great because then you have a chance in your lifetime to see your team actually win something. Whereas Newcastle, I think, got their first trophy this year in like how long is it? Maybe
54
it's like
years, I
60
think it
years,
was.
40
So it was
years.
54.
Yeah, it like that's outrageous. I mean, there's teams that have way longer periods without trophies than they do, even. It's like imagine going your whole lifetime and like one of the best achievements you could have seen for your team was they avoided relegation in the league. It's like you don't want to be able to like I get that there's like excitement about these things, but like you don't want to see your team win a champion, like have a shot to win a championship and be the best team.
Hey
Um,
man, listen, you don't know what it's like to finish 17th, okay? That's a pretty big deal.
I wouldn't know. Finished 17th with 6 weeks left in the season. Really, really tense battle at the end there. Really had them sweating. So yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit like it's just saving face because I think most people at this point kind of have that feeling of like, yeah, I think we're ready for like the roster rules to be changed. And it's like, if you really felt this way, why didn't you say it before all this stuff happened? It's not like all of a sudden the roster rules changed and became stricter. Like these have been the roster rules for years now. It's been outdated for years now. Why are you only saying it now when you are running into issues with it? It's like that's what like he's correct in what he's saying, but I think the timing of when he's saying it is saving face.
And look at that. It's only been 4 minutes, and Connor's gone on to my second point in the topic.
Well, stop sharing the sheet with me ahead of time. That's the
You're right. I
problem.
should that's absolutely right. I should make you pick a random scarf, and I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna interview basically. That's the only way I can avoid this. So to go back on topic, right? Is it respectable or is it damage control? I think it is damage control, but I think it's better than hiding in your office and putting up this image like, oh, it's whatever, I don't care. You absolutely have owners. I mean, you've seen it in the past who have just sat there and closed the door and been like, yeah, we'll fix it later. Don't worry about it. Don't look at me. Don't ask questions. He's getting out in front of it. He's putting himself out in front of the public, and I appreciate that. I think that's a really really respectable thing to do, even if it is damage control, right? Because I don't think that the aspect of it being damage control is so negative that the respect is lost. I think for lack of a better term, right? So my next question was kind of like, what does this mean for MLS as a whole? Like, Do you respect the idea that, he's coming out and saying this now, and why, when are the changes coming, and blah 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 blah. And Connor did all of that. So, maybe we'll circle back to him at the end if he
Yeah,
has
we have a
anything
lot
more
of
to
topics.
share.
I'm trying to move us along. I'm
What?
trying to make sure we
People don't
cover
want to listen to
everything.
3 hours of us? You're crazy.
And yeah, no, I honestly I don't. There's a million things we can make a whole podcast about things I'd rather do than talk for 3 hours.
So yeah, this, like I said, there wasn't much that he said in the episode, or in the episode with Landon and Tim, that was incorrect. Like, everything he said was pretty spot on, right? You don't have mechanisms currently to replace players that are injured quickly, right? Especially if they get injured at the end of a window. The new mechanisms for signing talent like Dejan Jovic's U22 initiative, they're really good until they aren't, right? They're great until they hurt you. And we've been down this road before with the salary cap and the roster rules, and we're not going to rehash it. You can go listen to any one of the episodes that we've listened to in the past. But I think it's really interesting and really telling that you have this really high ranking GM, one that was labeled, by the way, the signing of the season during our not so deep dive with our friend Lacuna Galaxiana. That when I asked them who's the biggest signing, they go, could we just say it was Will Kuntz? Because he was so, so good. And he's coming out and he's basically saying, yep, we're in a really tough place because MLS won't let us be good. Could it be deflecting? Right? You absolutely have a roster that should be competing better than they are. I would say. I don't think that this roster is a winless in 13 games roster. I think it could be deflecting, sure. But what I take from this is the fact that you're starting to have these owners, ones with historically strong clubs, step up and say, all right, enough's enough. The salary nonsense and the roster rule nonsense, all of it's getting a little bit too much. It's time to move past this because we are ready to compete on the global stage, right? Not just with each other, but with everybody around us. And I think that should spark some optimism in fans, right? You talk about, why is he only saying it now when he's getting hurt by it? Because that's how you start. They weren't hurting people before because it didn't have that sort of impact. Now that it's starting to have the impact, people are starting to say, "Oh wait, this isn't actually as good as we thought it was. Maybe let's step it up another level." You don't start speaking out when things are still working okay. So now that they're not, that's when you start saying, "Okay, it's time to change," right? So eventually, I think the old heads in the room are going to lose out on the numbers game, and the new faces are going to start pushing through with changes that may make this league better. And I think it's absolutely closer to that than it is 3, 4, 5 years ago. Because this isn't the first time you're hearing of owners being unsettled, right? Jorge Mas is at Inter Miami is always saying that they could take step forward and forward and forward. Absolutely. So now you've got LA Galaxy starting to pop up, and slowly I think you're going to see more owners who are going to grow tired of sitting behind the scenes and are going to step up and start saying publicly that maybe it's time for change. And I just hope it doesn't come too late.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, kind of going back to it being like a saving face thing, there's plenty of examples of teams in this league that have been able to win and continue to be successful. I really think Galaxy are just kind of hitting like an unlucky period right now where guys are just getting really banged up. And I mean, you're literally missing, I would say, your most important player for the entire year. Right now, Peck and Paintsel both have the injury symbol next to them on transfer market. So kind of a symbol for you right there. I mean, those three guys, if they're out, that's like your whole attack gone. So that's going to be very tough. And that's where the discussion comes in on being able to properly build depth into the team. And it's a very fair point to bring up. But there are teams that build themselves for long-term success and probably look into the future. Like, I can't imagine it was a complete blindside that they weren't going to be able to bring back Jovic. Like, I feel like they would have known that going into the year. Like, I don't think it was all of a sudden like, wow, what, like, I can't believe this happened. All of a sudden, like, we can't afford Jovic anymore. I mean, maybe that was the case. It just doesn't feel like it. But like, there's like Columbus, Cincinnati, even their down the street rivals, LAFC, have shown consistent years of success. Whereas this team is saw success last year and is really on the complete opposite end of that this year through injuries and I mean, I'd argue a little bit of poor roster building, to be honest. I mean, there was only so long you were going to be able to get away with 35-year-old center backs. So I think what he says is true, but I think it is kind of saving face.
No, and absolutely, I don't disagree necessarily. I just don't think that it's a bad thing that he's saving face because he's coming out and saying stuff, right? Instead of hiding. But